Well, hello and welcome to Growing Deeper Daily with Gateway Church. It's Holy Week 2021, and each day this week we are charting the path of Jesus from his triumphal entry on Palm Sunday all the way to the cross on Friday and to an empty tomb this coming Sunday. Once again, I want to invite you out this week to our Good Friday service. It's at 7 o'clock. We're going to be spending time around God's Word, reflecting on Christ's last words on the cross, as well as taking communion together. And then this coming Sunday at 9 and 11 o'clock, I want to invite you out here to Gateway. We'll be celebrating the Lord's Day. We'll be celebrating Easter Sunday in the hope of resurrection, that new life and a new day has come because Jesus is alive. Please be praying, investing, and inviting a friend out this coming week. Registrations for this Sunday will open up today, so keep your eyes open on our website and in your email inboxes. But today we are on Tuesday of Holy Week. Remember what's happened so far. This wonderful triumphal entry of Palm Sunday that Jesus came in and was proclaimed as the Son of David, the King. But they were wanting a political leader, not a savior of their souls. And Jesus is going to make his way towards the cross in humility and gentleness. That's what the sign of Palm Sunday is when he rides on that humble, gentle child donkey. And then on Monday, we see Jesus making his way towards Jerusalem. And you see Jesus calling out hypocrisy, calling out exploitation. Jesus cursing the fig tree as a sign that even though the leaves are there, there is no fruit. It may have the appearance of something going on, but on the inside it's barren and shallow and not fruit bearing. That fig tree was a symbol of ancient Israel, often seen throughout the prophets, talked about as this fig tree of God. And he curses it. It will not bear fruit. And then he goes to Jerusalem to worship, and he's disturbed by what he sees. He overturns the money changers in the temple, exploiting individuals for profit at this day of holy sacrifice and this week of holy remembrance for the Passover. It was Jesus confronting them in their areas of error and abuse and hypocrisy. Jesus starts off Holy Week with a great intensity, and it continues on into Tuesday. Jesus makes his way back towards Jerusalem on Tuesday, and it says in Matthew chapter 21, verse 20 and following, that he sees that fig tree that he had cursed the day prior. It says, then when the disciples saw that the fig tree had withered at once, they said, how did it do so? And Jesus said, I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you not only do what you have done to this fig tree, but even more, you'll say to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, and it will happen. And whatever you ask in prayer, you will receive if you have faith. Jesus challenges his disciples, trust in me, believe in me. This fig tree that you saw withered just a day after me cursing it is just a small sign of the power of God that is at work, the power of God and the potential of God in your midst. Will you trust him? Will you believe him? Will you have faith? Not faith in God for him to come through on our, inconsequential requests for him to show up, but God to come up in true substantive ways that change. Do you have faith? Do you trust God to change hearts and souls and lives? And then really the rest of the day on Tuesday, Jesus does two things. He debates with the religious leaders in the temple area in Jerusalem. And then he goes to the Mount of Olives and he teaches. And in chapters 24 and 25, we have the Olivet Discourse. If you want to track Jesus's words and teachings on this Tuesday of Holy Week, read from the end of chapter 21 of Matthew all the way through chapter 25. That's primarily the events of this Tuesday of Holy Week, where Jesus debates and then teaches on the Mount of Olives. His debate in the temple is all around what is going to be true devotion to God. The Pharisees, they're challenging Jesus. The other leaders in that time are challenging Jesus. And it opens up in chapter 21, verse 23, with Jesus challenging them by whose authority he does these things. Jesus is telling them as he debates these religious leaders that I come with a different authority. Look what it says in verse 23. When he entered the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came to him as he was teaching and said, by what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority? It's the question of authority that is confronting the people of that day, these religious leaders. Jesus answered them, I will ask you one question. If you tell me the answer, then I will tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John, where did it come? From heaven or from man? And they discussed it among themselves, saying, if we say from heaven, he will say to us, why then did you not believe? But if we say from man, we are afraid of the crowd. For they all hold that John was a prophet. And he said to them, neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things. Jesus challenges and gets ready to debate these leaders by bringing up this issue of authority. He says, what about John's baptism? Was it from God or man? And Jesus knows that he has them in a bind here. If they say it was from God, then why didn't you not follow him? If they say it was from man, then they know that the people in that day saw him as a prophet on behalf of God. They would cause unrest. They were afraid to answer the answer of authority. And Jesus then says to them, I don't have to answer you either. The authority with which Jesus is doing his work and his ministry, the authority on which he is going to teach, and the authority with which he is going to go to the cross and ultimately to the empty tomb is an authority from God above. It's an authority within his godhood itself. And so in the next few chapters, in chapters 22 and into 23, Jesus uses various parables, talking about different ways that people that think they have been part of the people of God, these religious leaders, are really not welcoming to the real people of God. The parable of the wedding feast and of the tenants and all these things, they're illustrations of Jesus debating with those leaders at that day, the authority of God in Jesus, and how they have not been walking aligned with the ways of God. You could see why they are now intensifying their plot to bring Jesus to a place of judgment and a place of pain and a place of death. The Holy Week, it's not just a happy-go-lucky kind of experience to think back on the events. It's not just joy that followed Jesus. Each day, it intensified more and more. Each day, the reality of Jesus' authority, the reality of what Jesus was trying to bring, the way that Jesus was debating and confronting the people of its day, the way that Jesus was ultimately to bear the sin and the weight of the evil in this world, that it intensified. It got heavier as the week progressed, because Jesus did not hold back in sharing who he was and confronting others when they separated themselves from the true God by setting up for themselves authority that was never theirs to have. And then in chapter 24 and 25, we see Jesus then leaving the temple area. Read chapters 22 and 23 this week, today. Jesus really intensifying his teaching once again against the authorities of that day and calling out hypocrisy. You see that section in chapter 23, the great woes section, or it's just this amazing section where Jesus calls out the religious leaders. Woe to you, woe to you. In other words, there's judgment to come. And then in chapter 24 and 25, we see one of Matthew's 5 discourses, one of his 5 sermons that he uses to depict the teaching and the ways of Jesus. The Sermon on the Mount, the discipleship discourse, the parables discourse, the discourse on the church, and then lastly, here we see the Olivet discourse. It's a intensification of intensifying of what's to come. The Olivet discourse is about the time to come when Jesus and God will return and the world will be shaken and they will be looking for hope. That there is a time to come where there is going to be judgment, where there's going to be discipline and difficulty, where there's going to be hard things to come. But Jesus will ultimately show up on the scene. And there's just one parable, or one section here that I want to read with you. Read it in your own time, 24 and 25. Talks about the day of the temple being destroyed. It talks about the abomination of desolation. It talks about the signs of the age to come, the intensification of pain and turmoil and difficulty in this world. And yet there will be hope. And here it is in Matthew 24, verse 29. It says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man. And then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from the end of heaven to the other. The Son of Man will return in glory and in power. Matthew 24 and 25 are a sober reality that this world and the troubles to come, that it'll be difficult, that there will always be seasons of tribulation and difficulty and a great tribulation yet to come, but that the Son of Man will return, that he's going to come back in power, that he's going to come back and rule and reign and set up a kingdom of beauty and glory and honor. And the question this day of Holy Week is, do you long for this Son of Man like this? Tuesday, still a few days out from the cross. Jesus challenges his disciples. Do you have faith? What happened to that fig tree? Believe and trust in me. I can do great things, even greater than that. Do you have faith today? Are you trusting God to do great things? Are you trusting God to change lives, to change hearts, to change minds, to change families, relationships in our world? Jesus, on Tuesday of Holy Week, he debates. He goes at it with those chief priests and religious leaders. He calls out their hypocrisy and he puts them to the test, asking by whose great authority does he do his work. And they were silent, because to recognize Jesus was to give him the recognition that they did not want. And so Jesus debates with them and demonstrates that those who think they know the Lord on the external may not truly know him in the heart. And he challenges them in the temple and all that would listen. Do you know and follow the Lord? And then in chapter 24 and 25, as Jesus goes to the Mount of Olives, overlooking the temple area in Jerusalem, and as he shares about the difficulties and the tribulations and the hard times to come, he points ultimately to himself, to the Son of Man who will return and make all things right, where he will gather his people and bring them to himself and rule and reign with them forever. Jesus, even in the midst of the challenges of this week, is pointing to the hope that comes through himself. Well, once again, today, get in Matthew, end of chapter 21 through chapter 25, and think today of the depth of Jesus' teachings and challenges in the midst of his debates and object lessons and parables during this day. And as we prepare to go towards the hope of the cross and the hope of the gospel, remind yourself, remember today that Jesus has the authority, and he calls us to have faith in him, no matter the hard times to come, because ultimately he brings about hope and forgiveness. God bless you. Have a great Tuesday. We'll see you soon.